Well, hello everyone. This is Katrina with IMAGINiT. Welcome to this presentation on the IMAGINiT Utilities for Revit. With some introductions, and then I will be going through an overview of the utilities for Revit by IMAGINiT. And then I will be switching over to Revit to do a demo on as many of the tools that we can get to fit into the time that we have. And then we will save some time at the end of this presentation for any questions that you might have. But as Lisa mentioned, if you do have any questions that we're not able to address, feel free to put those into the chat panel, and then we will get back to you after the presentation. Okay, so just a little bit of my background. Again, my name is Katrina. I'm with IMAGINiT out of the San Francisco office, and I am part of the Building Solutions Division team. I am licensed in the state of California with over 20 years of experience in the AEC industry. I have my professional certification for Revit from Autodesk, and I am also an Autodesk certified instructor. So that's just a little bit of my background. Today we will be covering the IMAGINiT Utilities for Revit that has been developed by our internal software development team. So if you are not already aware, we have over 40 tools that were developed with the intention of saving time for different tasks that you would be doing inside of the Revit software. So these would be tasks that have to do with, let's say, QA/QC, modeling, creating sheets and views. So we have over 40 tools that all do different tasks that help you out throughout the design and delivery process. Okay, and so for the tasks that we'll be looking at today and the tools that we'll be looking at, they apply to the different disciplines. So whether you're from the field of architecture, structure, MEP, you'll find that a lot of these tools do apply to your day-to-day workflows. One thing to note, however, is that if you are using Revit LT, Revit LT does not allow third-party add-ins. So if you are interested in using the IMAGINiT Utilities for Revit, you do need to upgrade to Revit software, not the LT. Okay, so just something to note there. And so that image that you're seeing at the bottom is the tab within the Revit ribbon that contains all of the different that we offer. So you're seeing here over 40 tools again, and we'll be looking at most of these in the presentation today. Okay, so in this slide, you're seeing all of the different tools. So we'll be looking at these tools and how they can help us out throughout the design and delivery process as far as maybe organizing our project browser. So we have tools that are meant to help us when we are doing project browser related tasks. We have several tools that help us save time when we're going through the modeling process in Revit. We also have specific tools that help us organize or do QA/QC on annotations in our model and so forth. So again, we'll be trying to look at as many of these in the time frame that we have morning. Okay, so if you're interested in the utilities for Revit from IMAGINiT, these are free to any of the IMAGINiT Autodesk subscription clients as well as ASI Autodesk subscription clients. And it is available through the IMAGINiT client portal. If you are not an IMAGINiT subscription client, you are able to download a free 14-day trial from the following website. And if you decide to purchase it in the future, you can contact your IMAGINiT sales rep that can help you out with that, or you can go direct to our website, any one of these two websites that you're seeing here at the bottom of the screen. And if you're already using the utilities for Revit and you want to upgrade to Revit 2020, so these would be some of the newer tools that we've added to the IMAGINiT Utilities. Okay, if you have any questions at all after this presentation, feel free to contact your sales rep and so that we can get you the information that you need. All right, so I am going to jump right into Revit and we will take a look at the different tools that we have in our IMAGINiT tab in Revit. So let me go ahead and switch over here. Okay, so you should be seeing the Revit screen right now. I'm just going to go to the IMAGINiT tab at the top. So here you'll see the 42, I believe, tools that we have. Okay, so we'll be looking at these tools in groups. So I'll be looking at first the tools that help us out in organizing our project browser, and then we'll be looking at tools for helping us manage our annotations in Revit. And then those that we can use for the modeling process. And then we have some specific ones that we can use to manage parameters in our Revit project as well as in Revit families that we're using for our projects. And then the last part will be some specific tools that we can use for workflow related or QA/QC related tasks. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a project browser here. Okay, if we look at the Sheets branch on the project browser, so one of the tools that we have with the IMAGINiT Utilities is a sheet view duplicator. So what that means is that we can take an existing sheet and a view and we can create a new one, so we can duplicate it to create a new sheet with a new view on it as well. Okay, so I'm just going to switch over to one of the sheets here, the A1.1 partition plan, and use this as a starting point to create a new sheet, perhaps for a finish plan. Okay, so in the IMAGINiT tab, okay, if we go to the Sheet View Duplicator, I'll go ahead and select that tool. Let me just move it here to the screen. Okay, on here, so we can see the sheet that we're using as a starting point, and then in the first section, we can modify the sheet number that we want the new sheet to have, as well as the sheet name. So I'll go ahead and make this finish plan. You can also edit the naming rule, view naming rule, for the duplicate view that we're going to create. I'm just going to leave it at the default here for duplicated as a suffix. And then down at the bottom, we can see what the existing sheet is on the partition plan, and then we can decide what kind of view or which duplicate option we want to use for the new view that is going on this new sheet. So you'll see we have the 3 duplicate options available. I'll go ahead and use the first one here, and then I'll hit duplicate at the bottom. So if we look at our sheets now, we have the A1.4 finish plan, and on that sheet is the duplicated view. So we would still have to rename this. I'll go ahead and just rename this and call this one 01 finish. And then you'll also notice under floor plans, there is a new view right there. Okay, so that's how we can use the sheet view duplicator to create a new sheet and a new view. Another tool that we can use with the sheets is, let's say we decided that we were actually deleting one of these sheets. We're no longer issuing the PNC plan. That's going to be part of the electrical set. So if we delete that, now we have our numbering that is off. So if we want to, for the finish plan sheet, we have a tool for that as well. So in the IMAGINiT tab. So if we go to the Renumber drop-down, there is a sheet number update tool. So I'm going to select that. And then here we see a list of all of the different sheets in the project. We see the A1.2 and the A1.4, that is the new finish plan. And if we want to fill in the gap between those two sheet numbers, we can select those two sheets on here. And then we have this Fill Gaps button right at the bottom. When I go to select that in the second column, you'll see that it is going to change the A1.4 to an A1.3. So we could select two sheets, we could select multiple sheets, and it will renumber those sheets. So I'll go ahead and say OK. And then you'll notice now in the project browser that the finished plan sheet is now an A1.3. Okay, so that's how we start to renumber our sheets. We have another tool that is used specifically for lining up views on our sheets. So I'll go ahead and open up another one of these views here. And let me just quickly close out of the 3D view. I'll do a window tile. All. And let's say at some point in the project, we decided that we wanted to change the location of a view on a sheet. For this plan view specifically, I'm going to maybe move that a little bit from the sheet, maybe to the right as well, closer to the block information. And so that now that is the new location of the view. Or if we want to keep the other views aligned on any other sheets, we have a Viewport lineup tool. Also found in the IMAGINiT tab, so it is this tool right here. I'll go ahead and select that. And then let me move it to the screen right here. And so what we have here is a dialog box with two columns. We have the alignment view. So this is the sheet and the view that we're using as an alignment view. And then over to the right side, we see a list of any other similar sheets with similar views. Okay, so from this list here, we can pick the other sheets that we want to line up to the A1.2 furniture plan. So I can pick as many of the sheets here, hit line up at the bottom. It will give us a message that it has aligned those views, and then you watch that view right there. When I go to hit done, that has now moved to align with this view right here. So we just did one sheet here, but if you had hundreds of sheets, it will work just the same. One thing to note is that with the Viewport lineup, it does use the crop region for aligning, so they do have to be the same size and location in all of the different views that we are aligning. Okay. So that is a Viewport lineup. Okay. We have, for the next tool, the dependent view copy. Okay, so if we look at the project browser here, under the floor plans section, we have a 01 partial plans that has two dependent views right under it. So there's a north and there is a south. If we look at these views, let me open up the north here and do TW. You'll see that it is cropped to show the north part of the plan, and then the same goes with a south partial plan. This one is showing the south side of the plan. So that is for level 1. If we need dependent views for any of the other levels, that is what the next tool is for. So right in the middle of the ribbon, there is a dependent view copy. Okay, so if I go to select that tool, here we can see what view we're using to create the dependent view. So we have the 01 partial plans and we have the north and the south dependent views. Over to the right, we would pick the other views that we want to create dependent views under. So let's say we need dependent views under the level 2 floor and the level 3 floor as well. So we can check as many as we want over on the right side, and then we would say OK. So what that does is now if we look at the project browser under 0 to floor, we have the north and the south, and those are also already cropped similar to the north and south of the 0-1. That really saves us some time from having to through each one, creating the dependent view and then having to crop. We can, of course, use a scope box for that, but using this tool, you can go through the process through one dialog box right here. Okay, so that is creating dependent views. For as far as the modeling or the documentation process, just going to switch over to this typical details sheet. Okay, on here, so we have 4 details, 1 through 4 from right to left. If we want to change the numbering of views on sheets, we have a Renumber element tool. So in the top left side of the ribbon, we have the same Renumber tool that we actually went to for the sheet number, but on here we have another Renumber tool for element renumber. Okay, so I'm just going to select that. And at the very top, so we have a drop down and we can pick what kind of element we want to renumber. Okay, in this example, it is going to be the views on sheets. And then we can pick the numbering option we want. So we can renumber in the order that we're selecting. Okay, or if we can insert a number and renumber any elements that are affected by that number. Okay, and then, so I'm just going to leave this in selected order. For the next section, we can choose a selection method. So we can pick element by element in the order that we want them numbered in, or we can do a window select. Here, let's say we want the details numbered from left to right, so 1 through 4. And so I'm just going to pick individual elements and then hit next. So here, this is where we can pick the sequence. I'm just going to start left to right. When I'm done, I'm just going to escape or cancel. I can identify the starting number. So I could start at 1, I could start on some other number. Maybe if we're renumbering other rows of details, you might use a different starting number. And then we can also assign the increments. I'll leave that at 1. And then right below it, we have the proposed sequence. I'm going to select that and it will fill in this last column for the new number that it's going to change it to. So here you'll see it's now reversed. I'll hit renumber. And then now we can see that it is now numbered 1 through 4 from left to right. So that is a renumber element tool. Again, it's not just for views on sheets. It could be for other types of elements that you would see in that first drop down when you go into the title block or the dialog box. Okay, so the next tool is the Note Block Creator. Okay, I'm just going to switch over to one of the sheets here. To close out of the other views here. And so on this sheet, so if I zoom in, I have a note block, or sorry, a note right there, number 1. And then I already have a note block on the top right. So if we need to add additional ones, let me go ahead and activate this view. Okay, this note is, or note symbol is just an annotation. So I'll go to the Annotate tab, Symbol panel, and then Symbol tool. And what we have here is a family for a note annotation or a sheet note annotation. And then I'm just going to put some leaders on this one. Let me go ahead and add 2. And let's see, I'll go ahead and second here. Give me 1 second, Revit closed out. So go ahead and open that up. Always during a demo, right? Okay, so we'll wait that to open up and then I will go back to the A1.1 partition plan. It's opening. Are there any questions perhaps?
Yes, there are a couple we could go ahead and address now. So one is, I see you're using 2020. Are these tools available for 2019, 2018? I know that we have the tools available for 2019 and 18. Do the 10 new tools that were added in 2020, do those work with previous versions?
Yes, so it goes back to 2016. The new tools work as well with previous versions. The only one that doesn't go all the way back to 2016 is a fabrications tool, since that didn't exist back in Revit 2016. But yes.
Okay, and then we also have some questions around duplicating a sheet and views and how the IMAGINiT Utilities tool is different from the one that's built into Revit.
Which one was that? Sorry.
Duplicate a sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's the same 3 options: duplicate, duplicate with detailing, and duplicate as a dependent. So it does exactly the same thing. However, it already crops the view based on the view that you're using as a starting point, and it also allows you to create dependent views for multiple views at a time rather than going one at a time. So.
Okay, and then just one more, and I'll let you get back to that. So does the sheet view duplicator also duplicate legends and schedules, that sort of thing?
Yes, so you do have the option to do a duplicate with detailing. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, I will let you get back to it, and then we can finish up the rest of the questions with you then.
Great. So I'm back on the A1.1 partition plan. Let me go ahead and activate this view. And then I'm just going to add a note block on here, or sorry, a note, and I'll add 2 liters. Then I'm just going to, let's say, fix the arrows so that I can add a note to align those walls. And so for this one, the next number for the note block would be 4. So I'll go ahead and add that. Now, if we look at the note block on here, so we still need to add that number 4 note block and add the notes to go with it. Okay, so in the IMAGINiT tab, let's see, where is that? Right here. So the note block creator. So if I go to that tool right there, this is where we can manage the note blocks for all of the different sheets and views in our project. So what we see on here at the very top are 2 tabs. So the first one is where we manage the notes going on a specific level or sheet. So this one is for the 01 floor view. And these would be the notes that are for this specific view. So that number 4 that you're seeing here, that's the new symbol that I just added. And maybe we want to add a note on here, and let's say we want to put align face of walls. Okay, so we would add that. And then on the next tab, so under the project tab, here we can update any existing text or note blocks. And then we see what the old text is, which just goes up to number 3, and we see that here we can choose to change it to add the new text with a number 4 note. So I'm just going to say yes. Then we can also adjust the text spacing. We won't see it change until we close, but here under the line spacing, let's say rather than a 1, we want a spacing of 2 so that we can see it that way. You say OK, we hit close, and now you'll see that note block there. So this is just one view, but we can add the symbol and we can add the note block for all the different views, and we can manage it through this one tool right here. Okay, so that is a note block creator. We also have a legend creator. So this tool helps save us some time when we are creating legends such as door legends or window legends. So first we need to create a legend. We currently do not have any on here. So I'll go ahead and go to View tab, Legends drop down, Legend tool, and then I'll go ahead and name this door legend. And the scale would be ideally the same scale as the plan view. So I'll go ahead and say OK. And then on this legend, so the same way that we would add components to a legend, we go to the Annotate tab, Component dropdown, and then hit the Legend Component tool. So I'm just going to pick an example here. Maybe we want to first add a single flush door. We want an elevation, for example, and then I'll go ahead and place it on this legend. Okay, so we place the component first, and then right below it, we might want to add some text. So we go to the text tool, and let's say I'm going to put door name here. Okay, and then we're going to use this as a starting point to add all of the other doors to this legend. Okay, so in the IMAGINiT ribbon, I'm going to go to the legend creator. So right here, switch that over. Okay, so it already gives us steps on what we need to do. Step 1 would be to window select all the elements to copy. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the door and the text. Step 2, it already reads the category that we're interested in, which is doors. And then the text parameter, we would pick from the drop-down what parameter we want to use for the door name text. Okay, so let's say for this one, we want a family name, for example. And then I would hit OK. And what that does is it takes all the other doors in the project. Well, first it switches the door name to the family name, and then it adds all of the other doors, and then now we have a starting point for the legend without having to add all of these one at a time. Okay, and then of course now if we needed to reorganize this or reformat it and we wanted the doors side by side, then we can go ahead and do that. Okay, but it did save us some time, already added all the doors in the project. Okay, so that is the legend creator. Okay, for another view on this project, so on the documentation side of things, if I switch over to, let's say, the 01 floor view, okay, we have some additional renumber tools that we can use for the documentation process. One of them is the room renumber tool, and then we also have a door renumber. Okay, so if I'm going to zoom to the bottom of this plan, here we see some of the rooms. We have a stair 132, conference 103, and you'll see here there's also a gap there. It went 106, 107, 108. If we want to change the numbering, we can use the renumber tool that we looked at earlier, this time using the room renumber. So I'll go ahead and select that. Then we can pick from different options here. So we can renumber rooms by selecting. We can insert a room number and automatically renumber affected rooms. We can close any gaps with the numbers, or we can renumber from corresponding rooms from a different level of the building. I'll go ahead and use the rooms by selection, and then we can also pick the method that we want them numbered in. So we can pick individual room tags, so one at a time. We can window select. We can number as we're placing rooms in the view, or we can use a path that we place on this view, and it will renumber along that path. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use the last one here. So select rooms along a path of line segments and then hit next. Okay, so then I'm going to start somewhere here at the bottom, and then I'm just going to cross, so maybe up to this room. Okay, we won't do the entire plan. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and cancel, and then that will bring up this dialog box right here. So similar to what we did earlier, we can choose a starting number. So when we number the views, we were also able to pick the starting number. For rooms specifically, maybe we want 3 digits, 100 series for level 1, and then if we do use this tool for another level, we can start with 200, 300, and so forth. Okay, and then we would pick the increment that we want them numbered in, and then hit this button right below. See what the current number is and what the new number is going to be. Okay, so if we're good with that, we would hit renumber. And if we now look at the rooms, you'll see it is now 100, 101, 102, and it renumbered along the path that was created. Okay, so that is a room renumber. We can also renumber the doors. So if we look at one of these rooms, for example, now that we've changed the room number, we probably want these door tags to also be a 103. Okay, so if I go back to the renumber tool, hit the door mark update. Okay, here I can pick what I want to renumber, or which doors. I can select doors that I want to renumber, all doors on this level or this view that I'm on, or all the doors in the model. Okay, I'm just going to do the window select right here. And then we can pick the phase as well, and then we can pick the direction or the room number that the door is either going into or out of. Okay, so I'm going to do into room and then hit next, and then I'm just going to select these two. It's right here. Okay, so again, it brings up a dialog box, and on the last column, it's going to show us what these doors are going to be renumbered to. So 103, and because there's more than one door into the room, it's going to add the A, B, and A, B, C, D, however many doors you have. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hit update, and then now those two doors are renumbered. Okay, so you can use a lot of these renumber tools together for the documentation process. Okay, so some other tools that we can use to help us in documentation is the text find replace. Okay, so for that, let's say these instruction rooms right here, rather than having the room name be instruction, maybe we want to change it to training, for example. Okay, so I'm going to go up to this tool right here, text find replace. And then up at the top, I'm going to type in the text that I'm looking for. Okay, this one is instruction. And then I can also choose the find options, right? So how do we want to, or where do we want to look for this text? Is it in the active view? Is it in what we have selected, and so forth? Okay, here I'm going to do active view. I want to look for all of the instruction text in this 01 floor view. So I'm going to go ahead and hit find. It'll show me all of the rooms on here that are named instruction. Okay, and then down at the bottom, so I can type in what I want to replace this with. So maybe I want this to be training rooms instead. Okay, and then at the bottom, you do have two options. We can either replace only what we have selected, so we can choose to not all of them, or we can just hit replace all. So I'll go ahead and replace all here. And then now you'll see all of the instruction rooms are now named. Okay, so that is the text find replace. You'll also notice the text is title case, okay, which might not be your office standard. If we are in the middle of the project and we decide that we actually want these to be all uppercase, we can do that using the change case tool. So right here we have the change case. On here, we can pick what kind of text we want to change. Is it room names? Is it text annotation, text notes, view names, or view titles that are on the sheet? For this one, I'm going to leave it at room names, and then we can pick what we want to change it to. So maybe we want them all uppercase instead. So I'll go ahead and leave that selected, but you'll see you also have the option for title case, or if you want to switch to all lowercase, you can also select that here. And then in the middle section, we can pick what we want to apply this change to. Is it just the current level that we're on, or is it in all of the rooms in this model? I'll change all. Okay, and then down at the bottom, I'll go ahead and hit scan. It's going to show me all of the rooms and their names. And then this column right here is going to show me what it's going to change it to. So it'll be all uppercase. So I'll go ahead and hit change. How many were fixed? I'll say okay. I'll close out of this, and now you'll see all the room names are uppercase. Okay, so it also works with text notes, view names, view titles, okay, on sheets. Okay, so we can do that. All right, so aside from the change case, we can also change the actual font that is being used in the project. Okay, so still in this view, I'm going to go to the annotation font update tool. So let me select that. And so it might spin a little bit because it's going through all of the annotations in the project, the Revit model. But once it's done going through all of the annotations, it will bring up a dialog box where we can switch out the font that we're using with another font for the entire project. So let's see. Okay, so we'll just give it a minute here. It looks like it's still reading. Okay. All right, so this is the dialog box that it brings up. And so here I can quickly see that I'm using Arial for this project. I can select that. And then down at the bottom, we can select the font that we want to change this to. Okay, one thing to note about this though is that for the font style, we do need to go back and rename it. If we're using a naming convention that has the font type, let's say it's a 1/8 inch Arial, we'd need to go back and rename that to whatever new font we're using. Okay, so I'm going to select font, and then let me pick a different one here, maybe and then okay. Okay, so it's going to change it to that. Let me move this here, and then I would hit change. So again, it's going through all the text in the project, so text used anywhere. Okay, tags, room names. This is also a quick way if you started your project and your text is not per your office standards, we can quickly switch them out with another font style as needed. Okay, so I'll just give it a minute here and let it update all the text. And then we can see that we have 68 annotations changed. I'll go ahead and hit close and you'll see that is now the Calibri. So that is the annotation font update. Let me go ahead and pan over here. Top. And I saw a question pop up. So yes, they will. The font will change in detail views as well. And actually, if I go to, let's see, that view right there, that one's also the Calibri now. Okay, so for dimensions as well. So this one's a really great one that saves us a lot of time. So there we have a dimension text update. Okay, let's say for these dimensions that we're looking at here, we actually wanted to add a suffix to it that read clear, like a clear dimension. So I'll go ahead and hit the dim text update tool. And here, similar to the dialog box for dimensions, we can add text to the top of the dimension string, below it, a prefix or a suffix, or we can even replace it with a text. I'm going to add a suffix here, and maybe I want to add like that, and then I would hit pick. So when I hit pick, I can now go to the dimensions that I want to add that clear suffix to. You'll see it get added to all. Click cancel, and then now I have all those suffixes. Okay, so that's just a simple tool, but it saves us a lot of time, especially if we're having to update each one. Without the tool, we'd have to go to each dimension, pick that, and then add it one at a time. All right, so that is a dim text update. Now I want to kind of move on to the for the modeling process. Okay, so we have a place family tool. So I'm just going to go to the 01 furniture plan here. And let me hand over to this area. Okay, so for families, okay, we first have a family placement tool right here. So in the drop down, I'm going to hit show panel. It will show another kind of palette. Let me go ahead and that here. What we're seeing here is actually linked to a library on our network. So here, if I go to configure, it gives me the path and I can browse back to a library, might be your office library that you already have a set of families that you're using over and over again on projects. Okay, so with that library, I can now use this. I can pick on a family on here and I can place that in the project. Just a quick way to link to a library so that you can get families without having to browse to it every single time that you need to load one. Okay, so that is family placement. We also have another tool that we can use for modeling that is called the Place Family tool. If I pick that Place Family tool, move this here. There is the first link here where we have to pick the family. Let's say we want to put a family along several instances along this curve right here. So I would pick that More Options button. The family that I want to use, I would pick the curve. So it says curve, but it also works for a straight line. I'd pick that spline right there. I can pick or assign how many of these families I want along that curve. Maybe I want 3 evenly distributed, and I can choose to include or not include the endpoints, meaning do I want to place a family right at the endpoint or not? So I'm going to leave that unchecked and then hit evenly distribute, and it puts 3 of the place along this curve. So just a quick way, if you have a design, something similar to that, you want to put a family along that curve, you can use the Place Family tool. Okay, so that is for family placement. Okay, we also have some selection tools that we can use. Okay, so let me close out of this for now, and I'm just going to switch back over to the 01 floor. And let me close inactive first. Okay, so as far as selection, we have a grid select tool. Let's say we want to select all of the columns along grids A and B so that we can switch them out with a different type. So if I pick grid A and grid B, for example, and then go to the IMAGINiT ribbon and pick the grid select tool, can pick a tolerance, so how far away from this grid do we want to go to be able to select elements. It defaults to 0.1. We can pick the unit as well. I'll go ahead and leave it at that, and then we can pick what elements we want to select, either those that are maybe not on the grid but collinear with the grid, or elements that are touching the actual grid lines that we have selected. So I'll go ahead and do touching the grid line. And then we can choose if we want just elements on this level or all the levels in our project. So I'll go ahead and just do this level right here and then say OK. It will give us a list of all the elements that have been selected. So here I can see there are 12 structural columns, which are there. I'll say OK. We have them selected. I can switch them over to a different type. So it's just a quick way to select elements that happen to be on the grids that we have selected. So now you'll see those columns have switched to a different type. Okay, so that is a grid select tool. And then, okay, we have a little bit more time. I do want to get to some of the parameter tools. So I'm going to...
Now, before you move on to the parameter tools, since we have a question specifically about the grid select and you're right here, can grid select also select annotation?
Just model elements, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So for this view, okay, let me zoom out a bit here. Okay, we have what's called a match instance parameter that allows us to assign or input a value for an instance parameter for specific families. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is let's look at, let's say, a rated door. So we have this 20-minute door right here that is part of that electrical room. I'm going to go to the instance parameter tool right there. And then in this dialog box, so the first step is to select the source instance. Okay, so I'm going to pick door right there. It shows me what that type is. If I want to narrow down this list, I'll hit show editable parameters only. And then I can pick category parameters I want to edit. Let's say it has to do with materials. And that further narrows down the list. So on here I can see instance parameters for doors. So there's frame material and there's finish. And I can change the value on here. Let's say instead of painted, I want to do powder coat. And then I would change that. On the right side, I can pick the targets or what I want to change. Maybe it's all instances of this same door in this door type in this view in the entire project. I'll go ahead and pick, let's say, all instances in the project and then select choose target instances. So this will just show me how many it's about to modify or change. So again, it's reading through the entire model. May take a minute here. Okay, so once it's done reading through the model, I can see that I'm about to change 6 doors. So I'll go ahead and say okay. And then now if I pick that door right there, you'll see that the instance parameter for the finish of the door has now been updated to the powder coat finish. If I look for another one of these of doors, so we have an electrical room here. When I go to select that, it's also the powder coat. So it's a quick way to pick a family type and input instance parameters, which, as we know, if we had to do this for all the doors, native in Revit, we would have to go to every single door, or we could right-click, select all instances in the entire project, and then change it here. But that's just another quick way to get to the instance parameters and change it for several instances of that same door type. Okay. All right, so that is match instance parameter. And then I want to go over one other thing before we kind of open it up for some questions here. So there is a tool called the Family Processor. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, let's say, pick a family, and then in that family add a parameter to it that maybe I want to add to other families as well. Okay, so let's see. We've used doors. I'm going to pick a window here. I'll pick that window, and then I'll go to Edit Family to open it up in the Family Editor. For this window, okay, if I go to the IMAGINiT tab, there is the Family Processor. So I'll go ahead and select that. Then before I do anything, I'm going to go to the Actions tab here. And this is where we can add parameters to this family, okay, one or more. So I'll hit Add Family Parameters. We see the existing ones. I'll go ahead and type in the new parameters that I want. Maybe we don't have one for a glazing rating. So I'll go ahead and add rating. Okay, and then similar to what we see in Revit, we can pick what discipline and what parameter type we want this to be. So I'll just leave that at text for this one, and then I'll hit Add Parameter. So it adds it down to the list below, and on here we can pick if we want this parameter to be an instance or a type parameter. I'll go ahead and leave this as a type parameter, and then let me add another one on here. Or let's see, we might already have one, but I'll add a frame finish. Add a common text, add parameter, and maybe this one, I'll go ahead and make that an instance right there. On the last column, so here we can pick where we want this grouped under. So it's going to determine where it shows up in the project browser, for instance, or in the type properties dialog box for any type parameters. Okay, let me see if there's one here that applies to glazing rating. Okay, I'll go ahead and use energy analysis for that one. And for the frame finish, is there materials and finishes? Okay, so I'll click OK down at the bottom. Then now it switches back to the first tab, Processor. So we can either change it just for this family right here, or we can change it for multiple families. So I'll change it for this one first, and I'll go ahead and say that's families. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. So I'll do multiple families, and then this button right here. So here is where we can select other families to also add these parameters to. So I'll go ahead and select that, and then dialog box. So there it is. So it actually, on my other screen, so this one here was for the current family. So it's saying that the parameter has been processed and added to this family. So I can go ahead and just close that. And then now if I want to add to other families, I can go ahead and hit select families. It will ask me to browse to the location of those families. Let's say go to the library that I have, to Windows, and let's say I'll do all. So I'll just pick the Windows folder, say OK. It shows me all of the different window families in that library. Maybe we do all, maybe we do just a few. I'll go ahead and pick 2 of them and then hit Add Selected Files. So that will get added here. So we see the 2, and then we hit Select Files. It will show up on this list, and then I would hit Process Families. It's actually modifying those families in the library. And once it's done, so it brings up this dialog box right here. Let me expand it. We can show the result, and then it's saying that for those 2 families, it added the parameters and it saved the file. Okay, so I'm going to hit close, and then I'm just going to close out of this file right here. For this one, I'm just going to load it into the project and close. We do have an opportunity to save it. I'll just say no. And I'll go ahead and overwrite those windows. If I look at this window right here, there is now that frame finish parameter. And if I go into edit type, there is the glazing rating parameter. And then just to take a look at the other 2 windows, I'm just going to load them on here. Let me go to architecture, and load family. I'll just look for those 2 windows. Was single hung and double hung. And then we can pick what type we want to do for each one. Pick any size here and then say OK. And then I'll just go ahead and add it to that wall right. Okay. And then so for this window, it also has the frame finish. And if I go into edit type, there is the same glazing rating as well. So that one's really useful if you're trying to add a parameter to one or multiple families.